Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing when your ex sees you aren't bothered. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing when your ex sees you aren't bothered. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you are likely to be bothered and upset about lots of things, but also not so bothered about others. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing the consequences regarding your ex, about not being bothered, about 3 different things. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is you aren't bothered what they're doing. So if you've been dumped, and in particular, if you want to try to get your ex back, you will likely be bothered about what you believe your ex is doing. Now, during the time of a breakup, you would think if we had one ally, it would be our own brain, our mind. Surely this would be on our side, but sadly not, because our brain, our mind, likes to play tricks on us. It likes to think of the worst possible position, the worst case scenario. And therefore, our mind, our brain, generally will lead us to becoming anxious, feeding us with anxiety about what our ex, the dumper, may be doing during their time apart from us. But what if you aren't bothered about what they're doing? What if you can try and turn that tap of anxiety off? Well, let's consider some possibilities. Imagine your ex, the dumper, posts some photos on social media. You've no longer been together for a little while now, maybe it's been a few months, and you notice online there are some new photos of your ex. Maybe you think they look great. Maybe you think they look a little different. Whatever it may be, if you are feeling really bothered about this, you might decide that you want to reach out. You might want to try and give them a compliment, whatever exactly it is that you truly feel. You might think, well, I want to get my ex back. They posted a photo. Let me say something nice under their photo. Let me comment on this. Well, if you comment on your ex's photos, you are not likely to get the result you crave. The result you crave is getting back together. And although it is obviously polite and nice to give someone a compliment, you have to understand that your ex, the dumper, made the decision to end the relationship. Therefore, during this time apart, they are not wanting to be connected. And therefore, if you decide to comment and post on their social media, this is likely, instead of making them feel happy and positive, it is more likely to make them feel somewhat cautious, strange, and not really sure on exactly how to react to you giving them a compliment. Your ex, the dumper, doesn't at this time want to be connected with you romantically, and therefore if they see you giving compliments, they're going to be feeling a little bit unsure about what to do, and most likely they will not do anything. Most likely your ex, the dumper, will not say thank you. They will certainly not say let's get back together. Most likely they will do absolutely nothing at all. In rare instances, you might actually receive something negative, such as leave me alone. Okay, but that is probably less likely. More likely is you will just not receive anything. Maybe you get the acknowledgement of a thumbs up or something like that, but not what you crave. You crave your ex back. This isn't what will happen. Now let's imagine instead that you show that you aren't bothered, and therefore your ex, the dumper, posts these photos, you don't say anything. No comment, no compliment, nothing. Well, does this mean you'll get your ex back? Well, we can't guarantee you'll get your ex back, but what we can do is say that you're not going to be annoying them. You're not annoying them by speaking to them in a way that they don't feel comfortable with during this time. You might think, well, I'm saying something nice, but remember, they don't actually want you to. So therefore, if you do this, you are annoying them. And that is not going to get you any closer to getting your ex back. So if you don't say anything, you aren't annoying them. Additionally, if you don't say anything, then your ex-dumper might be somewhat surprised, because although they don't want you to comment, they somewhat expect you to. And that is the paradox. They don't want you to, but they imagine you will. And therefore, if you don't, it's going to add just a little bit of intrigue as to why isn't my dumpee complimenting me? I always thought that they would like what I'm wearing in this photo. I never thought they could resist complimenting me on this photo. I don't want them to, but I thought they would. And since they haven't, I'm starting to wonder what they're doing. And this is where things can be turned around just a little bit from a position that you find yourself in as a dumpee. Because you want to try to get your ex back, you want them to wonder about you. And therefore not commenting in a situation like this can actually help your cause. Now, this isn't the only way you can show that you're not bothered. Of course it isn't. And therefore, let's give a different example. Let's imagine that you were thinking to yourself that your ex-dumper has gone out somewhere and you're worried that they're making new connections. Maybe you are worried they're dating someone new. You're thinking they're out somewhere because they're not behaving in their normal way. Whatever that might be, however you might know, whether you've been told this, whether it's due to something you have seen or not seen online, whether you just find their lack of presence in some regard, suggesting that they are out somewhere doing something, and you know it's not with you, so who on earth are they with? Now, if you were bothered, you might reach out to your dumper. Lots of dumpees will try and soothe their anxiety by reaching out to their ex when they think their ex is out, enjoying themselves. And the dumpee might not say, hey, what are you doing? Stop enjoying yourself. Most dumpees probably wouldn't do that. But they might try and start a conversation with the thought that if their dumper is busy, they won't reply. But if they're not busy, they might reply, and therefore soothing the anxiety that they're not actually out doing anything. Now, this isn't going to help you for a good few reasons, but a couple of them being, firstly, as we've already mentioned, your ex-dumper sadly doesn't want to be with you right now. And therefore, if you reach out to them once again, you will likely be annoying them. And if you annoy them, this isn't going to get you closer to getting back together. But additionally, they probably won't reply to you. Now, this is creating that cycle of doom that you are trying to avoid anyway. You are reaching out in the hope that if they aren't busy, they are going to reach out to you. But if you annoy them by reaching out, they probably won't reply anyway. And therefore, it makes this experiment null and void, because whether they are out doing something or not, you probably won't get a reply. So it's totally pointless in this regard, but it also serves the purpose, unfortunately, of annoying them and pushing them further away. But what if you show you're not bothered? What if you don't reach out to your ex-dumper when you think they're out enjoying themselves? Well, let's imagine, for instance, they're not actually doing anything. You've got it wrong. They're sitting at home alone. Well, if you don't reach out to them, that is just going to be helping you on your way to implementing my version of the no contact rule. And if they aren't doing anything and they realise that you're not contacting them, remember they don't want you to, but they expect you to, then this is going to flip things round and they will actually be more conscious and concerned that you are living your life to the full and that you might be dating somebody else and that you might be having a more exciting time without them and making them more intrigued with you, which is exactly what we want as a dumpee. So you showcasing that you aren't bothered what they're doing because you're not chasing them to ask what they're doing, or you're not trying to get validation that they're sitting at home alone. By you not doing that, you are actually making them worried and almost thinking about you in a way which maybe they haven't in quite some time. Again, this will really help you. If you want to get your ex back, you need them to be thinking about you. And therefore, if they do start to think about you in a way where they're wondering if you're having a great time, that is going to help you. Now, let's imagine that worst case scenario sadly is true, and your ex-dumper is out with friends, with family, or maybe even on a date, which, by the way, will probably lead to nowhere, so don't get too worried about it. Well, if you don't reach out to them and they are doing other things, okay, maybe initially this isn't going to get your ex back, but it's laying those foundations of them maybe considering it later down the line. Because if they're having a great time, if they are on a date, or if they are more likely, maybe they are out, but they're just with friends or family, as I've already said, you contacting them will annoy them. And if you annoy them, they're not going to want to be with you. If you do the opposite of that, if you show you're not bothered, then this means you aren't annoying them. It means they will see you in a better light. And it means the next time they are free, single, and considering their options, you will be front and centre in their mind in a positive way, rather than, oh, my dumpee, they were so annoying. They annoyed me all the time. Every time I was out with my friends, message. So annoying. I don't want to be with them. Okay? If you don't hassle them, they will think of you better. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is you aren't bothered about yourself. So today we're speaking about the consequences regarding your dumper if you aren't bothered about certain things. And point number 2 is very different to point number 1, because point number 2 is about yourself and the fact that you as a dumpee are no longer bothered about yourself. Now, what does this mean? What are the consequences? Well, there are an unlimited amount of possibilities of how this could be showcased. So let's go through a couple today. One of which is you stop eating healthy. Now, this might mean that you start binge eating. You start eating too much, and therefore you put on lots of weight. Alternatively, it might mean that you feel that you can't eat. You eat too little, you lose lots of weight. Either way, the outcome is the same. You no longer look healthy. You no longer look attractive in your dumper's mind. You might say, well, how do I know that they don't find me attractive? Well, let's consider it. If you are not eating healthy, if you are not living a healthy life, if you are looking less healthy than when your relationship ended, then there is no, if little chance, that your ex-dumper will see you in a more positive light. That is the reality. Being healthy is absolutely vital for not only your own self, but in trying to get your ex back. The byproduct of being healthy is increased physical attraction. So we need to do it for ourselves, and the byproduct is it will increase the chance of other people finding us attractive. If you stop eating healthy, or maybe you say to yourself, well, I didn't eat healthy before, but now you're actually eating even worse, in whichever direction that is, too much or too little, doesn't matter, same result. Then what does this mean? What is the consequence of you not being bothered about yourself? You're not caring about your health. You're not caring about your appearance. You're not caring about how people perceive you. Well, if your ex-dumper bumps into you, they are not going to find you physically attractive. This is important. Whatever anybody says, a romantic relationship needs physical attraction. Now you might think, well, I haven't bumped into my dumper, but maybe others have. Maybe, for instance, mutual friends see you and they pass on that information to your ex-dumper. That won't help your cause either. On social media, maybe a photo of you was put online. Maybe you didn't put it online, but perhaps you were somewhere where you happen to be within the photo. Again, if you don't look healthy, it's not going to help you. Now, you shouldn't be living your life in any way for your ex or anyone else, but you need to be doing it for you. But just remember, the byproduct of living a healthy life is you are more physically attractive. So when we consider the first sub-point of point number 2, if you aren't bothered about yourself, what does that actually mean? What are the consequences with your ex? Well, they're going to find you less physically attractive, and that means, unfortunately, there is very little chance indeed they will want to reconnect. Now, there is multiple sub-points we could speak about in point number 2, but let's just look at one more today, and that is, you're no longer bothered about yourself. You don't go out with your friends anymore. You can't be bothered. Your friends ask you to go somewhere. I can't be bothered. I don't want to go anymore. I just want to sit in my room alone. Now, what are the consequences here? Well, maybe your ex-dumper bumps into your group of friends, but you're not there. Now, why is that? Maybe they ask, and maybe they are told some type of lie that your friends are trying to say to cover you, but it really sounds really obvious. Maybe your friends say the truth. Maybe your friends say, hey, they didn't want to come out tonight because of what you did to them. Okay, do you think this puts you in a good position? Sadly not. If your ex-dumper believes you have an unstable mindset, that is not attractive. Rightly or wrongly, Fair or not, it's reality. Unstable mindsets are not attractive. If you don't go out with your friends, you're not going to be able to live your life in a way where you become someone who your ex-dumper will view as a potential dating option. If you want your ex back, you need to be a dateable option. You can't be hiding away. Now, I'm not saying in the odd circumstance, maybe straight away after the breakup, you don't want to go out. That's fair enough. We're talking in a more general sense. We're talking about you never, ever, ever wanting to go out again. We're talking about the trend of you stopping doing things that you used to love. We're talking about the fact that you no longer want to go out and be social with anyone at any time. If you do this, it's not going to help you. Either your ex will see that you're not there and wonder why and work it out and it not help you, or alternatively, mutual friends will pass that information on to your ex anyway. It might even be via social media without anybody meaning to send the info to your ex. Just the fact you're not in the photo, you're not mentioned in the get-togethers, the gatherings, the social events. It will become clear that you feel that you can't, and that fact that you don't have a stable mindset will not help you. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the buildup of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description. And point number 3 is you aren't bothered about anniversaries. So today, as I've been saying, we're talking about the effect of you not being bothered about certain things on your ex-dumper. And point number 3 is about anniversaries. And what happens if you show you aren't bothered about these anniversaries? Well, let's just go through a couple today. Let's speak of the anniversary of your ex-dumper's their birthday. What happens if you don't reach out to them? Well, this can be presented in 2 main ways. Let's say, for instance, you were dumped 6 months ago. You've heard nothing since. Your ex-dumper's birthday comes around and you decide to reach out to them. What does that say? Well, it shows them that you are still into them big time. And what does it show for them not contacting you in all that time? Well, sadly, it shows that they're not ready to reconnect. And therefore, if you reach out to them saying happy birthday, it does count as chasing them. It's not going to help you. It's not going to show you as a dateable option. It's going to show you as putting them on a pedestal with you having no other options. So I do not suggest that you reach out to your ex-dumper for their birthday unless you've had a positive interaction started by them in the weeks leading up to their birthday. Maybe you bumped into them randomly 3 weeks before their birthday. They stopped you. You were going to carry on going. They stopped you. They had a chat. It was good. It was positive. You didn't get back together, but it did leave things in a much better place. Well, in that regard, when their birthday comes around, maybe you have the scope to say happy birthday, because if you don't, maybe it will look a little awkward in comparison to the good conversation you'd recently had. But that is in a minority of instances. Most of you won't be in that position. Most of you, sadly, wouldn't have heard from your ex in quite a while. I do not suggest you reach out to them, because the theme through today's podcast, if you don't say happy birthday, if you show you're not bothered, then that actually means they will be thinking of you rather than you thinking of them. And even if you are thinking of them, you're not letting on. So they won't necessarily want you to say happy birthday. They very likely don't want you to say happy birthday, but they expect you to say happy birthday. And if you don't give them your interest and your value, then they will start to wonder about you in a more positive sense. It's the paradox of human nature. So now let's consider another anniversary you're not bothered about. It's Valentine's Day. Do you reach out to them? You've had many great Valentine's days with your ex. Valentine's Day comes along. You think, I'm going to send a huge, long letter accompanied by a card and get my ex back. Well, sadly, grand gestures, as this could be deemed as, have a very poor success rate. If your ex-dumper wants to reconnect, they will more than likely let you know. And if they don't reach out, if they don't show their interest, it likely means that sadly, they are not ready at this time. And maybe they never will, but certainly right now they're not. If you overload them with emotion, this just shows them that you are putting them on that pedestal. Similar to the birthday situation, you are giving them all of your value and you are not receiving anything back. This is not a fair value exchange. Most relationships are based on fair value exchanges. You're doing all the giving here. They're not giving anything back. It's not something that's going to seem attractive to them. And therefore, you shouldn't be wishing your ex a happy Valentine's Day. Don't do this. And if you don't, what's the consequence? Well, even though your ex-dumper doesn't want you to reach out to them, they will be wondering why you haven't. And instead, they'll be thinking, wait a minute, has my dumpee got a new Valentine's? Are they reaching out and spending time with someone new? Maybe my dumpee is a dateable option because they're not contacting me, so who are they with? And if you're a dateable option, you could once again become a dateable option to your ex.